Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we talk about Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Brandon Bonner.
And I'm Craig Allison,
And
and we'll be your host. So you made fun of me last week for messing up my name, and you can't even get the intro right.
No,
so.
you were laughing. That's how you tripped me up.
All right, so like I said last week, over the next 6 or 7, I'm not sure yet how many we're going to have, 6 or 7 episodes, we're going to be talking about what we consume as Christians, the entertainment, social media kind of stuff, technology, something very related to the struggle that we talked about. I can't remember how many episodes ago that was when we talked about being lukewarm. This is very related to that. So I think in the back of our mind, we probably have the answer to this. Some of these questions that we're going to pose, but we tend to justify it. So that's where that lukewarm piece comes in, because it's stuff that we really don't want to give up. And so, if we're honest, most of us have watched shows like Stranger Things. Some of this the darker material kind of stuff that like leads into or gets into like the supernatural. And some people say Harry Potter, it's talking about very some dark elements there. But we're gonna have some people that are gonna listen to this and be like, "What? That's just so crazy." But I want y'all to hang with us here on this episode. Just reserve any judgment until we cover all the material, and then you guys decide what you want to think about this. So, talking about shows, movies with these dark supernatural vibes. So here's the real questions that are going to force us to wrestle with, that we need to be asking. This first one, is this just entertainment, or is it possible, and underline that word, is it possible that it is shaping how we think and how we interact with our world? So does the daily consumption of this darker material mold us or form our thoughts? Okay, so that's one question. Here's another question. Can we consume things without being impacted at all? Okay, so now I'm pulling out just a little bit, because I think the logical progression here is to think about this is, are we able to consume whatever it is, good or bad, and not be impacted at all? Or do we have the ability to completely insulate ourselves from the things that we consume, whether that's this darker material or some really good stuff? Because I think the obvious answer is like, yeah, if I'm consuming the Bible and I'm reading Bible, yeah, absolutely I'm impacted by that. I mean, how could you not be? Well, what about like stuff that like the dark stuff? Oh, no. I'm not impacted by that at all. That doesn't affect me in any way whatsoever. It's almost like, can you jump in a pool and not get wet?
No.
So I don't know. I mean, this is why we're going to talk about this. It's like, can we
Right.
consume some of this stuff that's really well done? I mean, it's super entertaining. Like, even to the point where like we end up binge watching certain shows because it has just so pulled us in. Okay, so let's talk about this first question I've got here. Those first 3 questions were just to get the juices flowing. Is watching dark or supernatural shows a sin?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I don't think automatically. I think probably that's probably not the best question. Maybe.
Are you challenging my question?
I am challenging your question. 1 Corinthians 10:23, I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. So, I mean, we can binge a show and not feel convicted, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily helping us grow spiritually. So maybe the question shouldn't be, is this allowed? Am I allowed to be watching this? Maybe the question is this helping me become who God is calling me to be?
Okay. I mean, when you frame it out in that context, it really shifts the responsibility on us to be evaluating something from just a completely different paradigm. Because I think that's what people want to hear is the yes or no. Like, is this a sin? Yes, then don't do it. But it is more nuanced than that.
Right.
And when you reframe it, I get what you're saying there, because reframing it in that question makes a lot more sense to us. But that's harder to do, Brandon.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's extremely difficult because you could apply that to so many things, and you could come to a point where you're like, I just don't even need to consume any media at all.
Right.
And is that realistic? Is that what we're supposed to do? I don't know. I mean, I think there's examples of the early Christians they partaked in entertainment or things that they enjoyed. So that's probably where you could really dive deep into a rabbit hole. We were talking about Paul. This was last week, week before's episode. We were talking about Paul's vision of divorce in 1 Corinthians. He's like, it's just this takes you away from doing kingdom things, so you shouldn't do it. But if you have to do it, okay, you can do it.
You're talking not divorce, but getting married.
Right, getting married. Sorry, getting married. And so this could be one of those things. Like, it's technically not kingdom building activity. So should we do it at all?
Yeah, and I think it too in this context. I think about those who have taken the extreme position on this, and they completely remove themselves from all modernity, like the Amish people, that they live in an isolated community. And while there's a lot of good stuff that I could say about that, they're also not doing a great job as far as evangelizing and being in the world but not of it, is what Scripture says. And so I don't know if that completely relates to this. I'd have to tease that out some more to think about it. But it, if you're listening to this, I'd love to have y'all's feedback on this actually, and get what you guys think. Okay, here's the second one I've got. What is it doing to your mind? Does what I watch really affect me like that? And I say yes, I think it does, and probably more than we actually want to admit, or more than we realize. Philippians 4:8 tells us to think about what is true, what is noble. Basically, focus your thoughts on higher spiritual things. Proverbs 4:23 says to guard our hearts because everything flows from it. So to notice after we do watch something like these darker shows, demonic type stuff or whatever, notice our mood. Like after we've watched these things, or after we've been watched, are we more anxious? Are we maybe more numb, or more disengaged with other people? Are we more fearful? And by the way, this is anything. I'm talking about digital media now, but I'm also thinking about books that I've read, because I'm a reader, and I would, after reading, being completely engrossed, it's just like the world went away, which is part of the reason, I want to have that escape sometimes. But I noticed that after I had been reading for a long time, I didn't really want to have anything to do with anybody. And the stuff I was reading wasn't even that bad. I'm not talking about dark supernatural kind of stuff. I'm just talking about, reading, stuff that's, fiction or whatever. So I think noticing how our behavior, what our mental place looks like after we've watched these things is a crucial thing for us to notice. And so it's all of that to say you can't be watching or binge watching dark things and expect your mind to stay full of light.
Yeah. I don't think, and you're hinting at this, but I don't think it's just dark things. I think it's just anything that is secular in nature could pull your mind away from the kingdom, in excess and without proper boundaries.
Right.
I mean, you could watch a comedy that is nothing inherently wrong with that comedy, but I mean, if the only thing that you do from the time you wake up to go to sleep is watch this comedy, then you're probably not serving the kingdom in an effective capacity in the way that you're called to be, in the way that God's calling you to be.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it has to be dark in nature. And I don't think it just is limited to like reading or movies, but it's music and it's just any consumption of any kind,
Any media.
Yeah. Can really impact kind of your thought process. And I caught it, when I first became a Christian, the music that I listened to was inappropriate. It was inappropriate. And when I became a Christian, I continued to listen to that music. And at some point I was like, well, maybe I'll just try not listening to it anymore, and noticed an immediate change in my vocabulary and the words that I chose to use, my thought process, how I viewed things. And so I think media can have such an impact on mindset and where we're at. I'm reading a book right now, and in that book, it talks a lot about how music for some individuals can play a huge piece into their mindset. Like it's talking about professional athletes preparing for a big game. Music's a big piece of their prep.
Yeah.
And so media has such a powerful influence on us. And so the type of media that we consume is important for us to pay attention and how it affects us.
And I think the distinction that I want to make here, because everything you're saying is absolutely 100% correct. But, watching a football game versus watching something that has, like some of these horror movies and stuff. I mean, it's some of that stuff gets really dark. It gets really satanic. And I know that there's a lot of Christians that absolutely love those types of movies or those types of shows. And I really wrestle with, I'm not wired to really watch that stuff. Now, I did watch Stranger Things. And as I watched through that show, because everybody was talking about how good it was, which is not a reason to watch anything, by the way. But again, I didn't want to form an opinion until I saw it. But after reviewing it, there's absolutely a lot of like demonic, dark things in that. Am I a better person for watching that? And this is where it gets really nuanced, because I think that we have to look at some of this stuff from a adult perspective. And it's like, as an adult, I can look at that, and there were actually Christian elements in that show that I could pull out and I could actually do sermons on, okay? But there was also a lot of elements that weren't Christian either. And so as an adult, I can be much more nuanced with that. I have the maturity and the mindset to differentiate, to know what things, okay? But if I'm setting that example, how do I tell a younger person who does not have that maturity to separate out, to know the things, how do I tell them, well, you shouldn't watch that? Well, did you watch it? You see, it does become problematic at that point. So, this is a struggle. This is a struggle for a lot of Christians, which is why we're talking about it.
Yep.
So, what about this idea that these shows, like I've mentioned, are just fiction? And that's what I've heard. I've heard that as a rationale, as a reason. It's not real. It's make-believe. There's nothing wrong with watching it. It is just purely entertainment. I veg out while I watch it. And I get that argument. It is highly entertaining.
Yep.
Some of these shows, very entertaining stuff. What's your thoughts on that then? It's just fiction, right?
I see the rationale. But it's hard for me to answer that question because everyone's different and everyone perceives media differently. Like for me, I'm a scaredy cat. I do not like horror movies, so like the demonic stuff and like Stranger Things is about as much horror I would lean into.
Yeah.
That's probably my limit right there. And there's even some moments now I was kind of scared. Don't make fun of me, but that's probably my limit. But I think that we have to think about, like, we have to understand what influence this stuff's having on us. Fiction, not fiction, doesn't matter. I mean, you can watch nonfiction stuff and it can have a negative impact on you
Sure.
too.
Sure.
So I think it's important for us to really understand, you know, what, how is this impacting me as a Christian? You know, I think there's a big difference between, you know, watching something with different types of themes, secular things, and then getting comfortable with that lifestyle, right? You can watch reality TV and see all kind of things. That's nonfiction.
Yeah.
And it can, for a lot of people, that's entertainment. It's maybe funny or whatever it might be. But we're not, or hopefully as a Christian, you're not getting comfortable like, oh, I'd love to live that lifestyle.
You know, I think about the fiction piece of this, especially with the darker stuff, the demonic stuff. And Paul writing in Ephesians chapter 6 that our battle is not against flesh and blood, it's against the spiritual forces, it's against evil. He's clearly talking about this demonic realm, and has, you know, in other letters too, has some very strong language that he uses to avoid any of that stuff. And so this is where it becomes complicated for me, because as a Christian, I get that and I understand that completely. And I also see the entertainment piece of it. And so I guess this is probably, I'm communicating, I think, the struggle that a lot of us have with, you know, whatever entertainment, whatever we gravitate towards as our choice of media consumption, okay? And for the sake, because we're going to get into the other stuff, I think, later, you know, that's not dark. For this episode, I want to focus on the darker stuff. And as I was researching this, and you can go look this up, it's very interesting to see Hollywood, the increase in production of demonic movies and shows. I don't know what to do with that, but it's telling a story.
Yeah.
And when I say an increase, I'm talking an exponential increase. And so that tells me that there's a market for it, and there's a lot of people that are paying money to immerse themselves in that darker material.
Yeah.
And I don't know how as Christians we can be okay with that.
And maybe that's the better angle and conversation for this is, do we talk about the spiritual realm enough to understand that is a real thing, and the things that we're getting entertainment from that are like demonic in nature are very anti-Christian things. Like these are there's huge warnings about them in Scripture. I know we've talked in the past, and I know you have some different experiences with this specifically, and we've talked about like how Satan can use media to desensitize us to like demonic forces. So as an American culture, like that's not real. It's fiction.
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of Christians that I know, some even here, that if you talk about demonic stuff, if you talk about demon possession, they're like, no, that's not real. That doesn't occur. Mm-hmm. They believe that happened in the first century, but they said, you know, that all ended.
Yeah.
And I have evidence to the contrary,
right,
to that. As a matter of fact, the proof text they used is 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which you've got a Bible there. Can I borrow that for a second? Because I think this is important, because we're talking about demonic stuff. We're talking about the supernatural. And I want people to understand that we've made assumptions here that I think give license to exposing ourselves to these things. So everybody knows this is like the love chapter, chapter 13.
Next page, probably.
Yeah. And so Paul goes into verse 8. He's wrapping it up. Love never ends. Now, and this is where he goes into this, the things that are going to be ending. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. It's part of the proof text where, you know, people that talk in tongues were like, well, you know, that stuff ended in the first century. That was a miraculous work. they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly. So he goes on, and he's basically saying at the end of this, now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. But it's interesting to say the things, to read the things that he lists there that are going to end, these supernatural abilities, prophesying, speaking in tongues. What he does not list there, what is not being said, is that Satan and his demonic angels that were cast out of heaven, when that which is made perfect is known, which is Jesus, his revelation, when he leaves, when he is ascended, they're all going to leave too, that they're not going to be part of this world. That is absolutely incorrect.
Yep.
Satan is still here. This is his domain, and that's what Ephesians 6 talks about. These principalities, he's talking about demons, these demonic spirits. So for us to live in this naive, insulated bubble where we think that we cannot be impacted by demonic forces is just complete hogwash. Yep. It's not true, and we set ourselves up to be spiritually vulnerable for these attacks. And how do these attacks occur? I think depending on where you live, the culture, I think third world countries experience something completely different. I think here in America, Satan's tactic is to use entertainment in a lot of ways to expose us to dark demonic forces.
Yeah. And I think that's the better conversation is we need to talk more about the spiritual realm, because that's something I've noticed, especially in the Church of Christ. We don't talk about that,
No.
and a lot of it point to that scripture, like that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
And it is a thing, and there are forces in another dimension that we cannot see that's going on, and forces fighting for both good and evil. And there's scriptural evidence to back that up. And so if we're participating in activities that are aiding in the evil side of that spiritual battle, that's not good.
Listen, I've seen some weird stuff as a minister, as a campus minister, things that defy explanation.
Yep.
Like firsthand, like it's just, and I'm not going to get into that on this podcast, but just mark my words that demonic forces are in this world today, and they operate in a lot of different ways. Yep. They have a lot of flexibility to operate in different ways. Okay, so are we supposed to cancel everything and judge people who don't?
Yes. Just kidding. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that would probably do more harm than good. I don't think we have to be weird about it, and that's not the goal, right? Romans 14:13, stop passing judgment. 1 Corinthians 8:9, don't let your freedom cause others to stumble. So, some people might feel convicted about watching certain types of shows, and others might not feel convicted. I think the important thing is to ask, am I honoring God? Is this helping me grow? Is this helping me live out who God is calling me to be? Or is this just defense of my habits? Am I justifying this because I enjoy it and it's entertainment? And so I think that's a question. I think that's not an answer that we can provide anyone, and that's not our job to provide it. Conviction is not, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but conviction is not our jobs. Conviction is something that happens internally. We just can read the scriptures and make that decision for ourselves.
The question, that tough question, though, I think exposes a lot of things, and here's where I tend to lean on, I think everybody has the answer to this if you're being brutally honest with yourself, which is that, or am I just defending a habit that I know in my heart, it's like, if Jesus was here, and I know this is like the catch thing, and I don't want it to sound trivial, but it's like, would you ask Jesus to come in and watch this show with you? Yep. and feel good about that? And I think if we're intellectually honest with one another, I mean, we know the answer to that is obvious. So why then would we do it? If we know that we wouldn't want Jesus sitting there watching it with us, or and it's just like, come on. And again, I don't want to come off across as, yep, like I don't, because this is a struggle. I'm telling you guys that are listening, there's some shows that really enjoy because they're vastly entertaining, but I probably see there. I use that word because that's just you want to defend it.
Yep. Yep. No, I mean this is super difficult stuff, right? And that is what is in Scripture. If things didn't step on our toes or make us uncomfortable in Scripture, then we're probably looking at it from the wrong lens. And so I think this is good conversation, and we don't have all the answers, but we know, we do know a couple things, right? And we know that we're called to do everything for God's glory, and I think that's a good reminder, right? Shows may not be ruining your salvation, but they could be impacting your transformation and renewal in God.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
there's I think 3 litmus test questions here that I need to remind myself of. Does this show pull me closer to God or distract me from Him? There's actually been some shows that I have watched that I didn't know what they were about, and they definitely pulled me closer to God because they were so freaky and dark. I was just like, Lord, please forgive me. I mean, because sometimes you end up watching stuff that you're not prepared to see, right? So you have to be careful. Would I watch? Well, I covered that one. Would I watch this with Jesus sitting next to me, or is this feeding fear or faith? So here's the deal. Nobody is saying that we need to delete every app. Although I think you've deleted a lot of your social media, haven't you?
I downloaded it again.
Well, that ruined that.
I'm going to be honest. But I have struggled with that because I've downloaded again. I've had it for maybe a month, and I'm kind of like, I think I should delete this again.
Yeah, because it pulls you right in.
Yeah.
To me, here's the bottom line. I'll end where we started. I don't think that there's anything that we consume that doesn't impact us, that doesn't bleed into us. I know a guy that talked to me. He was working at this job, and all of his coworkers just had really, really, use bad language nonstop. They dropped the F-bomb constantly, and that was not who he was about. And he accidentally dropped the F-bomb in front of me and Parker one time, and was like, "What? Did I just say that?" And then, he was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, I hear that all day. It's just a constant thing. And it's just such a good example of what I'm talking about here. Like, you can't not be impacted or affected by the things that you consume. It's like you can't jump into the pool without getting wet.
Yep.
So I think that's the bottom line. And just asking yourself, is anything that we consume, is it bringing us closer to Jesus? And if the answer to that is no, not really, I can't come up with a good defense, then maybe self-police yourself.
Yep.
So, final thoughts.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to like, share, unsubscribe if you didn't. Hopefully not. That would put us down to six instead of 7. But no, on a serious note, we hope you enjoyed this. Again, I feel like I should add a disclaimer. This is something that I struggle with. I'm not blocking out every non spiritual form of entertainment. So I think this is a good conversation and a good reminder of how we're supposed to live our lives. So appreciate the conversation. I want to plug a couple of our sponsors. So of course, Ministry League. It's a great app, some good resources on there. Our podcast is on there. So there's some other podcasts on there. So definitely encourage you to check that out in the App Store. We also have our sponsor, Central Church of Christ, in this beautiful studio here. So always appreciate that. And another podcast we want to plug is Digging Deeper After Sunday. A great podcast, talking a little bit about what we're talking about at Central, just in a much shorter form than the long-winded preacher on Sunday mornings. Yeah.
Hey, did we talk about? Sorry to interrupt your closing comments.
Okay, second week in a row we've done that.
Yeah. Did we talk about VidAngel?
We did not.
I thought we mentioned that at some point.
We did a couple weeks ago. Yeah, we talked about it. We mentioned it.
So there's, I completely forgot to even that may be something worth exploring. Yeah. I don't know anything about it. I know that probably some of our listeners do, and I'd like to, maybe if that's something that you have used, if it's effective.
Yeah.
Because if you could watch something that's vastly entertaining and, it gets cleaned up, that may be something worth looking at.
Yeah.
So
and if VidAngel wants to sponsor us.
Hey, maybe so, VidAngel. And there's others out there too. Thanks again for listening to this episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War. Be kind to one another, love one another, and remember the creator of the universe loves you so much that he gave up his only son for you. Have a blessed day.